Idealism prevails.
Make the world a better place.
I hope you enjoyed the screening. I'm very pleased, as already announced, to welcome two great experts here. On my left, Ceren Uysal. She's a human rights lawyer from Turkey. She has been working on various human rights issues, and most prominently and most fitting in this context, she has been setting up the legal aid at the Gezi Park protests and is living in Vienna for some time now. Very warm welcome to you, Ceren. And next to her is Christof Tschohl, also a human rights lawyer and former colleague at the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute of Human Rights. He is very much specialized on data protection, and I hope I get the directive out correctly. He has been very much active in bringing down the data retention directive and is working on numerous policy changes and strategic litigation cases on data protection, and has founded the NGO, Data Protection and Privacy NGO, Epicenter Works. Warm welcome to you also. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
I mean, what this film really showed very vividly, and why I think it is so suitable for the series, is the two perspectives of social media and the internet. And that's why I want to start on the positive side of things with you, Ceren, maybe. How important is social media and the internet for activists in governments and systems that are more repressive as we know it here in Europe?
Thank you very much. You know, after the movie, it will be a bit difficult to speak because we were talking about this outside. What we will say will be a kind of a reputation, maybe, because you know I lived what they lived in Brazil, and while I was watching, I had concerns about Syria because Turkey is now in a situation which has the same risks. So yeah, like I'm the maybe hopeful side, but I have some other concerns. But first, I want you to remember what we watched in the movie. There were some words which they repeated in different countries, like information, media, if you hate media, then make your own media, and accessing information, truth, lies, like honesty and manipulation, and these were repeated by different people from different countries, and it was the same in Turkey. I really remember the first day of Gezi protests. It was 31st of May 2013, and before that we had a kind of a movement, very small, like it was around 30 people, 40 people. There was a risk for Gezi Park. The government had a plan to make a huge mosque in the beginning, and then they decided to make a big shopping mall instead of this park. And those 30, 40 young people, they were trying to organize a political campaign against it, and they're trying to campaign for awareness. And I was in the courthouse, and I heard that one young person had arrested, and they brought him to courthouse, and we just supported him, we just voluntarily defended him, and he had released. And I remember that that evening, for me, Gezi Park was not something that much important. Of course, urban issues, of course, public spaces are quite important, but I was working with people who are tortured in prisons. I had working with other issues at that period. The pressure was really, really high, and we felt like breathless. So for me, Gezi Park thing was not that much important, and it was 31st of May in the morning. It was around 7. My phone had rang, and one of my friends called me, and he said that that the police burned the tents in Gezi Park, and it was something different. 30, 40 young people, they were sleeping in there. inside the tents, and the police attacked that. And they're not just arresting them, they were sleeping. This was very easy to arrest them, but they were burning them. And thanks to social media, someone could record it, and this was all in internet. And at 10 we just went there and we organized a public release. We were around 200 people. The police attacked us. Then at 2 there was I know that it's a bit longer, but it is very important. At 2 in the afternoon there was another demonstration. Because of the effect of internet, we were around 2,000 people. Then this evening in Istiklal Street, the main street, which you have to use to go to Gezi Park, I think we were around more than 100,000, 200,000 people. And in televisions, we had only documentaries. Turkey is not a country,
Penguins, right?
Penguins, yeah. This is very important. Penguins. We had only penguins documentaries in televisions, and people could only have a chance to access information through social media. And I think this is a very good summary about the effects of social media, because if it happened only in Istanbul, then we could say that yes, people heard it through phone calls, etc., etc. But at the same time, I can say all main cities in Turkey, Izmir, Ankara, at least 10 cities, 15 cities, people were outside and they had no other chance to access information except Twitter and Facebook. It also affects, this affects each other. Before coming here, I just checked through internet. When everything had started, the number of users of Twitter in Turkey was around 2 million. And all Gezi protests continued for 15 days, and at the end of the process, it was more than 10 million. So people decided that this is the right source for getting information. And also we had, I really would like to show you this picture. We also have a CNN, CNN Turk. And people also realized the power of media, how they produce information, how they manipulate information. CNN Turk was giving all the, after a while, they had to publish something because 5 million, 10 million people were outside. And they just gave news with the title of protesters attacked the police. They used Molotovs, etc. You saw Brazil. And at the same time, CNN International was giving the same news at the same time. And it says that the Turkish police attacked protesters very hardly. And my situation was quite interesting, and it also has a very strong connection with social media. I was in the legal aid team in 1st of May, 1 month before Gezi protests. And our phone numbers were we circulated it for a small group of people, like trade unions, some political organizations, because we know that they will need defense lawyers, and this was all. And 1st of May, I was not in the streets as a lawyer. I was a protester, because this was also my problem. But my phone was ringing, but non-stop. And I couldn't understand, because people were calling me from Ankara, Izmir. I even received one call from China, one from Ireland. People were asking me, we want to come there, but I have a problem about military. Do you think? And around 11, I was like that, what is happening? Because I never thought that I should check social media. I had a Twitter account, but I think I never used it. I just had it. And one of my friends told me that one alternative media group, which was internet-based, just circulated my phone number as the volunteer lawyer of Gezi protest. And I have no idea about the exact number, but again, before coming here, I just checked. When you put my phone number still in Twitter, you saw maybe 20,000 tweets about this. The main opposing party used it, the political groups, without my name. This is the weird part. And unfortunately, still some people are calling me, and they think that I'm in general terms, I'm a volunteer lawyer. They're trying to ask me questions. So after 2 days, it was quite difficult to organize everything. I was lucky because I'm an executive board member of a progressive lawyer association. So in the beginning, in 2 days, I could organize the legal aid only by myself, like calling my colleagues in Ankara, in Istanbul. I could have a network and we could organize. But after 2 days, it was impossible. And then we went to the bar association and we asked them to do something, but they were afraid, like they were crazy afraid about the effects, like the police could riot their building and they could be arrested, they could be targeted. But we had to do something because our protest process and the police behavior was a bit harder than Brazil, I could say. Like we were trying to defend people inside the gas clothes. Like we needed to go to hospitals, we needed to go to police stations, we needed to be in the courthouse, and it could not be organized by 2, 3, 5 people. So we couldn't we couldn't convince bar association, but we had no chance. So we decided to occupy the bar association, and without any violence, we just went there, sit in their table, started to use their phones, and they came and they asked us to go out, and we said we cannot. We have to do our job, and we will use your sources because this is our association. We are paying every single year we are paying you. So we needed to use them, and this was the story of our legal aid team. And only in Istanbul, I think 600 lawyers we worked together, and I can say that again, only in Istanbul there were around more than 2,000 young people had arrested, and I can say that none of them needed to find their own private lawyer. We organized everything, and it was a quite good experience, I guess.
Okay, this is a very heartwarming story of the effects of social media and the strengths of social media to actually protest against an unfair government. I'm sure that Christof looks at these things slightly more critical. I mean, on the one hand, because obviously this use of social media makes activists quite vulnerable also, but on the bigger picture, one of the quotes from the films I remembered quite vividly is the technology is, the situation is difficult and the risk is higher, but the technology is the same. So what are the dangers, on the other hand, to use social media in such a political way?
Well, everything can be kind of weaponized. Almost everything can be weaponized. But we are talking here about the very backbones of our communication infrastructure nowadays. And I think on one side, of course, the chances, all the thing that we call the internet, this infrastructure that we call the internet, we shouldn't forget that it was originally invented as a military project. The grandfather of internet was ARPANET, which sense was to build up a communication infrastructure that can be redundant, non-hierarchically, and where one node can be simply blasted out and it's still working because it's redundant, and because it doesn't have a particular hierarchy, so therefore there is no single point of failure. That was the original militarily motivated idea to build up this. And then we had the luck in history that it was mainly universities, it was their knowledge, it was also their desire of exchanging information, particularly scientific information, that led us into a situation where things like privacy, to be able to communicate anonymously in the internet, had been things that never had been laid down by law as a hard code, kind of, as something that we would say on the level of human rights or constitutional law. It was just a development, in fact. And the more we saw that the development of that spread, the more it got commercialized. And in this is the good news as well as the bad news. Because on one side, and now I'm talking as a technical engineer, and luckily happened to be firstly a technical engineer before I became a human rights lawyer, we theoretically could build these things properly. The keyword to it is privacy by design. Is very fancy at the moment. But it didn't happen so. It didn't. When all this stuff developed, it was, of course, mainly about financial interest, mainly about just how to say, making money with a lot of that. So we saw in the movie very impressively how a huge industry developed for all this surveillance stuff. What we also saw when we look, for example, at the Snowden leaks that we saw, it was for engineers working on that field. The things that Edward Snowden revealed have not been so much surprising. The most surprising thing was the amount of budget what this service is used for. And the most interesting thing is that the vast part of this budget had been used for paying off private companies, assisting in that. So I think that is the crucial thing that we have to be aware of, that this is not just, it is not simply just the government, and it's not simply just private companies. It is an effect going in a circle where, of course, there is only one truth in it, and that's money. That's how to make money. And on the other side is what we heard. I agree completely to that in the movie. It is about an elite being afraid of losing control because of these possibilities, because of that. I would, from my perspective, the positive side, the democratic side of all this, things leads, of course, for a ruling elite to the threat to lose power there. And this is, I think, the circle where we exactly are in the middle of that. We have companies who do not take any corporate social responsibility. Also, repetition, we heard it, but that's very crucial. I was in 2013 and 14 working in Turkey in a so-called twinning project. It was about cybercrime there, and I had the task to moderate between the talks of Turkish industries, telecom industries and internet industries and law enforcement. And what we saw in this table, I mean, my role was there to try to bring in some human rights there with a cooperation agreement and to try to keep it in some balance there. But the problem was, all I could do was throwing sticks for the parties, the stakeholders there. And it would have necessarily required that those who are kind of defending or theoretically defending that the companies, the ICT companies, where we are all customers, or the Turkish people have been customers, they should have kind of say, okay, there are rights and freedoms and we have responsibility and everything. But they didn't. They were sitting on this table and said, TIP is in Turkey the centralized central censorship authority, yeah? And they just say, we don't want any problems. We are just here for making money. We don't want, they didn't say that, but this was obvious. And TIP shall tell us what we do, and we do it. Yeah? And this is, I think, one of the biggest problems there. As long as privacy and human rights protections does not have a business case, it's kind of not fancy, and it's not done.
But at the same time, being devil's advocate, I don't think this is working still. But on the danger of being devil's advocate here, anti-privacy, which I'm not, I'm just wondering, another thing that I was wondering when we watched the film the first time at the center was that the whole social media really also, with everything where you're absolutely right and a total disbalance of power, at the same time also allowed people to reshape, to co-shape the narrative. One story that I had to think about, like 5 years ago at the protest in Iran, this now very famous video of Nida, a young protester who is being shot by the Iranian police. She's protesting entirely peacefully. A young doctor filmed that incident and smuggled it out of Iran. It was uploaded on YouTube, and at the time, it was not taken seriously up to the point where BBC covered it and did an interview with the doctor. Mm-hmm. By now, I would say the situation is slightly different. And there is more of a balance of shaping narratives. And wouldn't you think that this excessive access to the internet is, while I very much agree on the disparity of power, has sort of created a new balance? Same question to you after that.
Well, if to answer that question, I think I kind of have to make a jump back in history of about 300 years. Sorry, but if we well, I won't take so long for that. But if we think about how did human rights actually develop, we are talking about a result of the Age of Enlightenment. as we call it, where the main message there was very famous, for example, from Immanuel Kant, formulated with this call actually to civil society, sapere aude, which means of, hey, people, come out of your depending of your not free situation, which are to some extent you have caused yourself by being ignorant. Okay, so enlightenment, the age of enlightenment said, people as a society, we all have the responsibility to start thinking on our own, to start making up our own mind, to start having an opinion, to start. That is actually in the core what human dignity means, that we can all as individuals develop that and then exchange that. So now we are at the time where I think we need some kind of enlightenment 2.0, because why does it happen so easily that manipulation via media can work so easily? That's just happening if we have a society where somebody said, it has to be true, I read it in internet. Yeah? Or I saw it in the TV. Who knows the movie Whack the Dog? An old movie, great movie. He ended the war. Yeah, why I saw it on the TV. And as long as we are as a society, as people, so much being open for being influenced and not thinking ourselves, then it won't help us so much to have so much access, to have to drown kind of in the sea of information and so on. But the more we are able to think ourselves, of course, that is leading also to groups, to human rights activism groups, as we saw in the media, as you formed one. This is leading to it, and this reflection can lead us to organize us as a civil society, but also individually taking care of that. I think there is no easy way out of that. There is just the hard way of, that means thinking ourselves and learning.
And Ceren, to you, maybe the opposite question. How much do you feel that you and other activists of Gezi Park, especially in times like these, are being targeted by the government for things you did in the past on social media, because the government has profiles of your activities, of your communication, etc.? How dangerous do you think was the use of social media for you?
Okay, it is dangerous. Like last 2 years, around 2,000 people had arrested just because of their Facebook or Twitter posts, and so the things that we are talking, they're reality. But before social media, the governments were working with different tools. Like I had lots of cases, like how we saw that the state of authorities are using tools which we can say like violation of the privacy. Like I remember in one case that they listened a couple's bedroom, like they put a microphone inside. So tools can be changed, but I think we will be in the same line in this discussion. I just would like to maybe mention Lefebvre and Manuel Castas, who are quite important in this discussion. Like, internet is a public space. Like, even it is coming from a different meaning, or the reason why the government are using it something, but it is a public space. But it's a visual public space. So, so when something is a public space, it means that it also will have the same conflict in the society. It cannot be a thing without this. So there will be some people who are supporting government, or who are like the example of Pakistan, who are trying to trade someone, and of course there will be the concrete solutions of this. So because of this, I mentioned Casas, he's defining this as he's defining the society as the network society, and he's always mentioning that we have to find a hybrid space, or a third space, which we can just get using this network, this visual space, this public space, as a way to combine with a real one. And so for me, Gezi Park, Brazil, and Wall Street, and Tahrir, and those examples are quite important examples. It's not important if it is dangerous or not, but this is a tool that you can just use.
just some short that we actually we know that we basically agree a lot, that we do not just agree. I would like to mention here something. I think the internet is not just a public space, it is both, and I think that's important to consider, that we have both. But what we see is that, and this is nothing where we talk about high sophisticated technology question, but about very basic rules. What we see is that in the last, let's say, about 2 decades, we had a strong development that any kind of, any attempt of encrypting, of making private spaces there, real private spaces, that can by means of technology of encryption not be accessed anymore so easily from outside, are kind of punished. We have some, and we are talking there not about Syria, we are talking about Great Britain, for example, that has since about, I think, 2006 a law in place which is prohibiting to some extent encryption, or not prohibiting, but it can, what is possible is that a witness who is in possession of a key which is interesting for the police can put into jail until he spit out the key. So that's a core violation of human dignity there. The person simply used sorry. But what we see is this shift of paradigm where we lost the core thinking of the liberal aspects of our human rights guarantees. So it says there, if you encrypt something, if you have something to hide, it must be something illegal. Yeah? And so kind of you have to prove that it's not. And that is a shifting of paradigm of the basic concept that the one who interfere into a human rights guarantee has the burden of justifying it. And we are about to lose that in the mindset of people also.
Thank you for a really good and important addition. I don't want to keep these two to myself, but I would like also to give you the opportunity to ask questions and make statements. In order to get as many statements as possible and as many questions as possible, I would ask you to keep yourself short. Parastu, my colleague, kindly will go around with the microphone. Just raise your hand and Parastu will come to you.
Okay, if not, then I will continue asking questions.
I have 2 short questions. Firstly, what can a small private citizen or internet user actually do to protect him or herself from this governmentally organized cyber crimes? And secondly, what can a small political activist actually do to support struggles worldwide which are digitalized and are shown to a broad public space?
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, I will hand back to the panel. So maybe the first question directly goes to you.
Well, maybe I try to answer that from my very personal perspective. When I said in the end of 2009, I'm going to write a complaint to the Constitutional Court against Data Retention Directive, which said we have to surveil 500 million European citizens by retaining all the communication data, no matter if there was any suspect or not. I was, of course, it was like a joke figure, you know, like, well, nobody thought that it's going to happen. And I think if I would have done it alone, I think it would not have, the complaint might have been the same. I was writing it, and I think it wouldn't have done anything. But the point is that I had friends that we started first, founding an association there, starting to raise awareness, to talk with people about it, which led us then about 4 years later that we made suddenly a mass complaint of, for Austria, that's quite a lot, of more than 11,000 people who complained at the Constitutional Court. That was not anymore so easy for example, for the Constitutional Court to kind of just throw it out, to just try to sit it out or whatever. So I think what everybody can do, not everybody has to found an association and doing some complaints, but the first thing what everybody can do is just make it a topic. Talk with your people around. This is a question of awareness, and this is something that goes very smoothly. Talk with friends, with family, and try to make it a topic. Try to make the people think, because this kind of surveillance stuff is something we cannot smell it. It's like a kind of the poison gas. You cannot smell it, you cannot feel it, but in the moment when you recognize it, it's too late already. And I think there we can do quite a lot.
Okay, but maybe to get slightly more concrete, should we all close our Facebook accounts, our Twitter accounts, our WhatsApp accounts?
Of course not. Of course not. I'm very technology affine. For example, my good friend Max Schrems, who is, I think, quite well known, who was fighting with Facebook, or is still ongoing fighting with Facebook. He ever since said from the beginning, I do it because I like the service and because I like to use it. The main problem of these services is they provide very nice things and stuff to do on the upside that we talked already. But of course, if it's not disclosed what data are retained, what data are even produced, what is used and everything, that is the problem. That we don't know about it, and then suddenly the activists are surprised when they kind of use Facebook, and suddenly they have the police is quoting their Facebook posts and everything. So that is the problem, of course. We should do so. What we can do is try to watch our privacy settings, of course. Try to use, for example, if you see a service is doing that, like Facebook, okay, try to see if there is an alternative to it. At least for some things, go to Signal, for example, not using WhatsApp, which is belonging to Facebook, but use Signal, which is a privacy by design app. Yeah? Try to say, if you sometimes, maybe you can offer encryption for people, that at least somebody can send you an encrypted email. There is some basic stuff that is not rocket science, what the individual can do to build a little bit a circle of protection. It might not be too much, but talk about it also, try to see what it figure out. And then by the time maybe we will have a situation where a market is growing for that, where maybe some vendor can offer and say, my service is privacy by design. My service is not open for any kind of, and then if there is a critical mass who says, well, I'm interested, I'm even willing to pay money for having that feature, privacy as a feature, well, then maybe we have a chance even in a very market-steered world.
Okay, thank you for this quick do and don'ts. Ceren, a question to you. What can activists in Austria, if I understood the question correctly, do to support the struggles of movements globally?
Yeah, I think like there are some examples about this too. Like during Brazil protests, like the Gezi and Brazil, they were very close lately, and like they were sending some symbolic messages to each other. And also in Bologna, I remember students had occupied some buildings to support people who were like resisting in Turkey. But there are lots of ways. But I think if we will again refer the movie, the main issue is like people really want their stories be told. This is the issue. Like last year in Turkey, there was a curfew in Kurdish cities, and it continued like for months and months, and people didn't have internet. People couldn't leave their small districts, and many people had died. Even today, we don't know the number of people. And sometimes they had a chance to use their telephones. Sometimes, and when they reached us, the only thing that they were asking us, they knew that we had no chance to enter. Even the doctors could not enter, and they were asking us to tell their stories. So it is quite important, when I was in Turkey before state of emergency, last 6 months, it was quite difficult even for me, because I was really thinking what I will write in Facebook. I wanted to make a comment about something, but I had concerns, because I had lots of clients like that who wrote something stupid, a silly joke maybe, and stayed in jail for months before, because of this. So then this auto-censor made me crazy. I decided that I need to find a way to organize this. But like to break this fear, I think this international solidarity is important because people really want to be listened. People really want the other people to understand their problems. What are they living like? 50% of Turkey now against this system, this ruler, and so I think this is the most important thing that we could do from here.
Maybe one question to Christof on this. I remember another story. I'm sorry that all my references are very Iran-based, but that's one of the countries I've been working on for some time. But I remember, like in 2010, Iranian activists asked people outside of the country, on the one hand, to set their locations on Twitter and on Facebook to Tehran because it made it more difficult for the Secret Service to get involved and to detect people in Iran. And the second thing, and that maybe is also something you know, is that people outside of Iran were constantly working, like people like yourself who are engineers, working on safe VPN connections, say other ways of encrypting. So is that something that could be done from the outside?
Well, that is something that has to be done from outside and inside. This is all the time, it needs two sides, but there is a lot of possibilities in technology. That is also the nice things. That is what is empowering us. That is why actually the idea of open source, of all the world of open source, where are the coders in the room? Everybody who has a bit an idea of that. That is why open source is very interesting and important, highly important development, because it's about wisdom of crowds. It's about us all contributing there to find new. I remember I don't remember it exactly, but the story PGP as a standard for encryption. Do you know how it was brought into Europe?
Maybe you also want to explain what it is.
PGP stands for pretty good privacy, actually, and it's just a standard. It's a standard for an asymmetric encryption, where it can be used very simply for email encryption, for which it was invented, basically. And the code of this standard PGP has been exported on a T-shirt. The code was put on a T-shirt because it was not allowed to export it as code, because it has this dual use problem that it can be militarized also and so on. So in the moment where they put it on the T-shirt there, just written, it was about a matter of freedom of speech and freedom of opinion, which is quite theoretically still protected at that time anyway in US. so it could be exported. I mean, that's maybe a funny story about it, but that is exactly how we have to work part of it. It's partly guerrilla work, you can say, in that there, to really build up, as you said, virtual private networks, to grant, for example, outside of one particularly of a country like Turkey or Syria or Iran or something, to provide proxy servers there, maybe to provide a Tor server network is not so secure anymore. I mean, you don't know who is in the knots and so, yeah. So, but building up something in the idea of Tor, but in a real trusted circle of activists, for example. There is a bunch of things that is possible by technical means there, but it all the time has to be connected. It needs the cooperation, it needs support also for that, and it has to be, it's never enough just to do it on the technical side, like it's not enough just to do it on the legal side. We have to understand the problem societally and then try to bundle forces and come with our abilities. There we again, wisdom of crowds.
I have a check if there is another question or comment. If there is, then this is now the time. Yes.
You told that privacy should cost something, and I don't agree with that because I think privacy is a fundamental right. But I know that the service of Facebook shouldn't be free, but so I think they need to sell something of the data they are receiving from us.
Just before, is there anybody else who would like to ask something?
At the beginning of the film, we saw this case of a data center in Estocolm called Bahnhof, which actually received a request from the police saying that they wanted to monitor all the data going through this high security data center. And the excuse they gave for this was actually by the sake of security. They said, well, we have to track terrorist activity, and that justifies everything. Actually, this is a tactic that we haven't seen many governments follow. Maybe the best example would be the one of the United States, where they are asking people to give up their not only privacy, but also the liberty of movement, etc., for the sake of security, saying, well, we need to protect you, that's why we need you to have, so to speak, less liberty. And people, of course, or the most of the people would understand this quite well. My question would be, do you think it is possible to find a balance between privacy and the need for authorities to check against threats to our society? Or as this person ruling this data center mentioned, well, privacy is part of democracy, so there must be no intermission at all. Do you think there is a balance? Thank you.
Thank you. Right. I would like to ask you to maybe give your answers and also round up already, because we are reaching the end.
Oh, you want?
No, you can see.
Okay.
This
Well, the first question I feel directly addressed, and thank you giving me the opportunity to clarify something that was obviously not right understood. Of course, I didn't say privacy has to cost something. Of course, it's a fundamental right. What I meant there is in a world, especially in the economic world, that knows one truth, but the maximization of capital, obviously it looks like the only way that we can bring at least a bigger amount of companies to somehow follow the idea of privacy by design or something is if there is a business case for them. I would love to have a world where we just do it and all companies do it out of their own driven social responsibility, but they don't. So at least if we have now coming General Data Protection Regulation in May 2018, there is high threats of punishment up to 20 million euro, and there is also a basic principle of privacy by design. Let's see if this is enforced and this will be actual worth something. But from the approach, it looks like this is necessary, but of course it should be done by completely other impetus, not just by any business case for it. Yeah? To the second question there, do we find the balance? And so I think before answering that question, it's necessary to catch some myth behind this question. The myth is that to gain more security, we need to somehow lower the privacy standards. We have to give up privacy for more security, and that's simply not true. To give up privacy, to reduce privacy has firstly the effect of having less privacy, but not more security. Benjamin Franklin said in the right version of the quote, who tries to trade privacy for security doesn't deserve neither. Okay, he didn't. We have often a translation will lose both of them. No, he said doesn't deserve neither, for good reason, because that's not going together. It is absolutely possible. I think there will all the time be the questions of do we need to allow some interference, and our whole concept of human rights guarantees, the European Convention of Human Rights, does provide for that. We have barely absolutely guaranteed human rights, and privacy is not absolutely guaranteed. But if we would follow the rules, we would say, like the scheme how to check a proportionality test. Yeah, we would see if you start asking the first basic questions. What exactly is the legitimate reason, and how the hell is this measure that you're going to propose being effective? How it is suitable at all to gain more security? How is it suitable? How is there not less interfering methods to reach the same purpose and so on? So if we really follow a scheme that is overcome since about 50 years from the European Court of Human Rights, and if we use it, we wouldn't have really the problem so much of collisions, because most of the measures would already be disclosed as just simply ineffective of the purpose that they give us to. So I think we can come to there. As my roundup, we started to do that, or not just started, I think we put a big piece for that work. By now it's just in German. We are working on an international variation. It's called HEAT. It stands for Handbook on Evaluation of Laws Against Terror in Europe. And what we did there was, in legal terms, in technical terms, in societal terms, to see what is technology of surveillance that is here, how is it corresponding with legal basis, which technology does have legal basis, which does have none or just partly ones, and what is the effect on societies. And as a conclusion of the analysis, we come up with a catalog, with an action catalog, and with a criteria catalog, which is not at all inventing the wheel new. We just use things that are in place. We use already rules that we have on European Union level, that we have on the Austrian level, how to make an impact assessment of for legislators and so on. Yeah? So we made that as a roundup. We provided something much more intuitive from the approach than typically lawyers' texts. We tried to work with diagrams and everything, and root tables and everything, so that in the end everybody can access that, not just well-trained lawyers and everything. And I hope there we can further develop and we can contribute something to that exactly balance that you ask for, and where I think we can reach it.
I would like to pass that question also to Ceren, this balance between security and privacy, coming from a country that has quite extended state of emergency, which gives quite excessive powers to government and police and security services. Would you think that you need to balance that?
I think, this is a very, if we start to question this, if we start to ask this question, then things will continue through the same way. There was a coup attempt, and after the coup attempt, they decided to close some press, some media, some newspapers, and so there was a coup attempt. And it was they were trying to change the regime, and this is the AKP used it to legitimate their actions. And now, where is the free media? Where is the right to access information? But if we ask the same question, then but we should protect the elected government, then we have to give the same answer. Then yes, we have to close some newspapers if they are still making propaganda for the ones who were trying to organize this coup attempt, or we will start to forget about the other steps. And it's really happened like that in Turkey. People never reacted some acts which cannot be defined under the rule of law. They just think that yes, there is a danger, yes, that we have a Kurdish issue, yes, we have a Gülen organization, yes, we have ISIS inside. They never questioned the real political background and said, not maybe said yes, but be silent against this. And then right now, unfortunately, really we cannot claim that there is a rule of law in Turkey. There is there is we don't have a judiciary process right now. So I think this is a very important question. That there are some if we are calling something as the fundamental right, then we have no right to question it or no right to let someone to question it. Because this is the fundamental right, and I think we just have to fight to protect it and fight to remain it. And I agree with the last part. We have to do it with every single tools that we have. If it is the legal tools, yes, we will do it. Internet, yes, and the others. So.
Wonderful closing words, having to fight for fundamental rights. I would like to thank you both very much for joining us tonight. I would also like to thank the people behind the stage. Firstly, the whole team of the Top Kino, who has been a long-standing partner in these film series, as well as the team of This Human World, the Human Rights Film Festival in Vienna, who are supporting our events throughout the years. And last but not least, Sandra Benecki, my colleague, who puts together this program so thoughtfully and who can't be here tonight because she's sick. And last but not least, Parastu Fatemi, who has been great in supporting the organization of tonight's event and helping everybody to be heard. Thank you all, and please do join us if you feel like it in the more informal part of the event where we tend to have a drink and continue the discussion. Otherwise, I wish you a wonderful evening and look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thank you. Thank you.
Idealism prevails.
Make the world a better place.